1082 and the motion adopted on June 1st, 2020. The committee is proceeding to a briefing from the Minister and the officials on the government's response to the COVID-19. Today's meeting is taking place, of course, by video conference. The proceedings are public and are made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. For the benefit of all members and also our minister and witnesses, I should remind you all of a few rules to follow. But however, since everyone here was here yesterday except for Mr. D'Entremont, shall I dispense and go on to skip over that part with all the rules? Everybody has been on other committees, they've probably heard them many times. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to interpretation or a problem with your audio rises, please advise the chair immediately and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Before we get started, can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure they are on gallery view? With this view, you should be able to see all the participants in a grid view. It will ensure that all video participants can see one another. I would now, of course, like to welcome our witnesses again today who are with us. Of course, the Honourable Bernadette Jordan, Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. Now, the same list of participants are same as tomorrow, sure. So can I have unanimous consent not to read out everybody's name and their position again so as we can get down to business? Okay, hearing no no's, I'll let the Minister know that it's your turn for opening remarks for 6 minutes or less. When you're ready, Minister Jordan.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Mr. Chair,
yes.
If I may.
Yes, Mr. Arnold.
I believe the Minister's speaking notes were all circulated to us all yesterday. We've all had a chance to go over them. If the Minister would indulge us in allowing us to just simply go straight to questions, we may be able to get more question time in today, if she would so indulge us.
Okay, I leave that up to the Minister. It's your 6 minutes if you so want to use them, or if you want us to advance on the questioning, we can do that.
I would like to hear from the Minister.
I would like to make my statement, please.
Okay, 6 minutes is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks again for the opportunity to speak to the members of this committee. Today, I am again accompanied by many officials, including my Deputy Minister, Tim Sargent, and the Canadian Coast Guard Commissioner, Mario Pelletier. I appreciate the invitation to discuss our government's commitment to help Canada's fish and seafood sector get through these unprecedented and very challenging times. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve, we're working hard to protect Canadians, support their harvesters and businesses, and to ensure that families have what they need. I would like to begin by assuring members that my department remains very much at the forefront of managing Canada's fisheries and protecting the marine environment. As this crisis unfolded, our fishery officers kept up the patrols, surveillance of the North Atlantic right whales continue, and as I indicated in my testimony before you yesterday, the remediation work at Big Bar continues to move without stopping. Our officials have worked overtime to make sure that stakeholders across the country were being heard. We continue to navigate this crisis together, listening to advice from those who work in the fishery about when to open the various fishing seasons and how to adjust our ways of working to make sure that we continue to support commercial and recreational fishing. DFO officials and Harbour Authority volunteers have worked hard with provincial and territorial counterparts and other partners to ensure the health and safety of essential workers, fish harvesters, and indeed of all Canadians who use our harbours. The Coast Guard continues its essential operations and remains hard at work every day, delivering much-needed search and rescue, ice-breaking, maritime security, and environmental response. Aujourd'hui, je tiens à réaffirmer aux membres du comité.
Today, I want to reassure committee members that we continue to provide essential services in our fisheries sector so that those working in our fisheries can expect to receive the support they need to safely continue feeding Canadians.
Back in January, we started to see the kind of impact COVID-19 was having on the global economy, particularly in the seafood sector, with the decline of overseas export markets. Since then, my officials and I have been talking to and working with harvesters, aquaculture producers, processors, Indigenous partners, and the provinces and territories about some of the unique pressures the sector has been facing. As spring approached, we started to plan amidst an uncertain global market. We knew that in order to stabilize the industry as a whole, we would need to develop programs that would provide financial support to both harvesters and processors. As you well know, the window of harvesting certain stocks is limited, so products needed to be stored longer and new markets needed to be found. With export markets declining and domestic food supply becoming more important than ever, the industry will need to respond more to the Canadian domestic consumption. With the closures of restaurants across the country, Canadians are instead looking to purchase seafood at the store and from local harvesters. As you know, our government has delivered economic measures to help individual Canadians and businesses get through the pandemic through the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Canada Emergency Business Account, and a number of other tax credit measures. We've also been working around the clock to support the Canadian fish and seafood industry. We have to adapt to a new reality as they are the backbone of many of our coast communities. This has ultimately led to a significant $500 million investment to support the hardworking women and men of our fisheries. To deliver these funds, we've created the Fish Harvester Benefit, the Fish Harvester Grant, and the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund. The Fish Harvester Benefit will provide self-employed commercial harvesters and chairpersons' crews who cannot access the Canadian wage subsidy up to $847 a week. This includes those inshore and freshwater fisheries and fishing under Indigenous commercial communal licenses. The Fish Harvester Grant will provide a non-repayable grant of up to $10,000 to self-employed commercial harvesters who cannot access the Canada Emergency Business Account. Along with the benefit, these funds can be used to cover the costs of running a fishing business, including increasing costs due to health and safety requirements. We're working to ensure that harvesters can receive these supports this summer. The $62.5 million Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund is invested directly into the marine sector, processing sector, to help tackle a number of challenges and help plants to adapt to market changes and the new ways of working. Processors on the Atlantic and Pacific coasts can tap into the funds to increase the storage capacity, allowing them to buy more from harvesters and aquaculture operators. The funding can also be used to help with rebranding and marketing efforts and to make changes to manufacturing and automated technologies and to offset the costs of implementing health and safety measures. While these new programs take into account the unique operational structures of the industry, we know that this season will definitely be a challenge. That's why we've proposing changes to the Fish Harvest Employment Insurance System, which will allow harvesters and sharepersons to file EI claims based on previous season's earnings. The industry went into this pandemic strong, and we know this year is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before. Tens of thousands of Canadians were counting on this fishing season for employment, revenue, and food. By investing over $500 million in the seafood sector, our goal is not only to ensure that workers get the financial support that they need right now, but that the industry as a whole is placed in a strong position for recovery. As we continue to move forward in the face of so much global uncertainty, I am confident that we will continue to serve Canadians under these very difficult circumstances. And I am now happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. A little bit of time left over. Before we begin questions, I want to, of course, welcome Mr. D'Entremont to the committee today, if he's replacing his colleague, Mr. Calkins, from the riding of West Nova in Nova Scotia. Welcome to committee, sir. And now to Mr. Arnold for 6 minutes or less, when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. Early in the process, excuse me just a moment here, I've lost my sheet. Early in the process, fish harvesters were asking processors and provincial governments repeatedly asked for guidance from the federal government in their efforts to make their workplaces safe for Canadians. Time and again, these requests for guidance were ignored, and the federal government didn't provide any guidance. This created uncertainty and delays across our fish and seafood sectors. Yes, the provinces have a responsibility for workplace safety, but they simply wanted federal guidance in the unprecedented threats of COVID-19. Last week, the committee heard that the Coast Guard started developing onboard safety protocols for all vessels and bases in February, as soon as they heard that the COVID-19 crisis was coming. Minister, why did you refuse to provide workplace safety guidance such as the protocols that the Coast Guard had in hand for vessels of all sizes, or the protocols that CFIA had provided for meat processing plants?
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. With regards to the processors and making sure that they had the safety protocols put in place, as you know that this is a provincial jurisdiction. However, having said that, I met regularly with my provincial counterparts on both the East and the West Coast to talk to them about measures. We had regular weekly meetings to discuss what needed to be done in processing facilities. We recognized that CFIA had a role to play as well as the provincial government. We were there for them to make sure that the processing facilities were able to put protocols in place, and we actually had to delay some seasons in order to make sure that they could meet the necessary protocols that were required.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I actually neglected to recognize that I will be actually splitting my 6 minutes equally with Madam Gill as per a previous agreement. Minister, why have you repeatedly placed the needs of the processors by providing programs and protocols for them ahead of harvesters and the Canadians that they employ?
I would just very strongly disagree with that statement. Since the very beginning, we have been working with processors as well as harvesters to make sure that they had what they needed to be safe on the water, as well as to make sure that they had what they needed to have a successful season. We worked with processors to develop the programs that they needed in the Seafood Stabilization Fund, and we worked with the harvesters and a number of different organizations for the Harvesters Benefit and the Harvesters Grant. We're continuing to work with stakeholders right across the industry to make sure that we're addressing the needs that we have in the seafood sector this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass the remaining time to Madam Gill.
When you're ready, Madam Gill.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci à tous les gens. Oui, je m'excuse, je m'entends en même temps, c'est un peu difficile. C'est bon. Donc, j'aimerais remercier tous les gens qui sont ici, dont la ministre Jordan. Merci pour votre présence et pour accepter de répondre à nos questions. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais, parce que les gens s'inquiètent.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm not getting translation.
No, there's no translation. Could we get, are you on the French channel?
Oui.
The interpreter apologizes. I got mixed up. Terribly sorry. So I wanted to thank you, Madam Jordan, as well as all of the other people from the ministries who are here to answer to our questions. First of all, I would like to address the issue of the different subsidies that are available. People are worried because we know that the season is ending right now, or beginning right now, rather. Will they be able to benefit from the benefit and from the grant as well, the Fish Harvester Grant and the Fish Harvester Benefit specifically?
Madame Gill, we have worked very hard to make sure that we have the benefits in place that harvesters require. The Fish Harvester Benefit, we recognized right from the start that many of the fishing enterprises did not qualify for the measures that we had already put in place. There was a gap, and that was why we introduced the Fish Harvester Benefit and the Fish Harvester Grant. We are working now to get those programs out the door, recognizing the urgency because the seasons are ending in some areas, but I think that harvesters have to know that they have the security of knowing that those benefits are coming.
Donc, je comprends.
So if I understand correctly, Madam Minister, there is no date to stop, so I hope that your ministry will be able to do this very quickly, because the people who have received the CERB and other sectors are receiving right now help, and we know that from what I've been told by the different participants in the sector, they have been set aside. The harvesters are set aside, and they ask me frequently as to why have programs been made that are going to supposedly fill those gaps that you are working on, whereas it would have been simpler to include all of the fishing sector within all of the different programs and grants, if we're thinking of the SCS, all of the various programs, yeah.
So the challenge with including the fish and seafood sector in the programs that were already existing was they did not qualify based on the way that their systems were set up, based on the way that their enterprises were set up as businesses. They would not have included family members. Now they do. They were seasonal. They make all of their money in a very short period of time. They did not have the the same ability to look back on the previous months because their season hadn't even opened. Specifically for owner-operators, there were specific challenges there. We wanted to make sure that we dealt directly with the industry and met with their needs directly because they were the ones who were falling through the cracks. That is exactly what we did. We are now working diligently with the SDC to make sure that these programs are getting in place as quickly as possible. We know that the industry requires them. Harvesters are having a very difficult year this year, and we know that there's some significant challenges in export markets, but we know that the measures that we are putting in place are going to benefit the entire industry because it's going to continue to allow fish harvesters to survive this season.
Thank you. We'll now go on to Mr. Cormier for 6 minutes or less, please.
Alors, bonjour, Madame la Ministre.
Hello, Madam Minister. Thank you for being with us. I would like to thank you for all of your work and congratulate you for your work. And another thing that I want to congratulate you on is your French. To have made this effort to speak in French is laudable, and I hope that in our next discussions we will be able to carry them in French, and I congratulate you for having made such wonderful efforts. My questions have to do with the new programs. 470 million, one of the investments that is the largest of all in fisheries in the last few years. You know, harvesters are worried in this season. Madam Minister, what do you have to say about the different programs that have been announced, the 75% for the loss of revenue? And what about EI? We have said that harvesters would be able to qualify basing themselves on EI of previous years. I would like you to tell us a little bit more about these different programs, and can you possibly reassure our harvesters and make sure that they're going to get the help that they need in these difficult times?
Thank you, Mr. Cormier, and thank you also for all of the work that you've done in your riding to make sure that your harvesters and your processors' voices are heard. We have put three specific programs in place: the Fish Harvester Benefit, the Fish Harvester Grant, and then the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund. The Fish Harvester Benefit is going to provide up to $847 per week for owner-operators as well as share crew, recognizing that they did not qualify for the wage subsidy, and that they are, they treat their crews differently with regards to a share as opposed to a wage. We wanted to make sure that these people were captured. The grant is up to $10,000, and that is a non-repayable amount of money that can be given to harvesters who, to help with their overhead costs this year. Things like bait, insurance, license fees. These are all things that we know that they have costs on, and they are not going to be have quite as lucrative of season this year based on the what we're seeing with our export markets. And finally, the Seafood Stabilization Fund. That was a $62.5 million fund that we put in place for processors to be able to put safety protocols in place. Of course, it's backdated to March, so anything that they have done, they will be able to qualify for there, to put safety measures in place, as well as to retool their facilities to do value added, to make sure that they have the capacity to store. Right now, as you know, we are primarily a fresh market export, so having an ability to have fridges and freezers was something that we heard a lot about, and we wanted to make sure that we were there for them. These measures are going to be put in through the regional development agencies, but I will say that this would not have been possible without all of the input that we've got from so many great people across the industry. People in your riding, for example, like the maritime fisheries unions, the crabber associations, the harvesters, the processors. We've worked very diligently with all of them to make sure that we had the measures in place that they required to get through this very difficult season.
I'm going to switch to English now, and thank you, Minister, for those comments. And yes, of course, like fishing association, like fishermen, like all the industry, like play a key role on these measures. And I know you consult with them, we consult with them, so I thank you for that. So what are the things, Minister, that I want you to comment on, and maybe just to clarify? As you know, my father was a fisherman all his life. Now my cousin is now, like, taking part of in this business. A lot of comment that I've received is from new entrant in the fishing business, that, for example, that they are scared that they will probably maybe not able to qualify because they don't have any revenue to compare last year, for example, for the 75% wage subsidy. Can you talk about this a little bit? And I know that you receive a lot of asks on that part from different associations, like if they will be able to qualify under this program, or maybe other program that they are not aware of. So I know the CBDC and ACOA, for example, can help them, but are you able to say that, you know, that we listen to this and that we're gonna provide some help for them?
This is something that I have heard from a number of people from new entrants into the fishing sector. We know that this is an expensive venture to get into. Right now, they do not qualify for the fish harvester benefit or the fish harvester grant based on the fact that it's based on last season's or previous season's earnings specifically. You know, as the Prime Minister has said many times, nobody will be left behind. We'll continue to look at ways that we can support all people right across the country.
Alors, merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister. There is another subject I would like to mention, and like I said to your officials last week, there are the crab boats are going out, and unfortunately, shrimp boats haven't been able to go out this year. I know that you had a telephone interview with the shrimp harvesters, and yesterday or today, there have agreements that have been made in Quebec, and I think that the shrimpers there will be able to go out to sea. But if the fishing season doesn't go ahead for us, will we have specific programs to help the shrimpers? Can you tell us what is happening in the area of with shrimp in the Gulf and in other areas? Thank you.
We know that pretty much everybody in the fish and seafood sector is having a difficult season this year, and the shrimpers are no exception. You know, there's been some challenges there with them coming to an agreement on a price with processors, as well as, of course, a glut on the market left over from last year. There are a number of programs that the shrimp industry already does qualify for. They will qualify for the fish harvesters benefit or the wage subsidy, depending on how their business is structured. They will qualify for the CEBA or for the fish harvesters grant, once again, depending on how their their business is structured. And one of the things I also wanted to mention too is that we also have we're going to be instituting changes to Fisheries EI, and that's going to be something that's going to help carry a number of harvesters through the next year till we get through COVID-19. And as most of you would know, Fisheries EI is structured differently than regular EI. It's based on your catch as opposed to the amount of hours that you work. And what we have said.
Thank you, Minister. That's all the time that's permitted. We'll now go to Madam Gill for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would like to get back to the issue of families. And Madam Minister has said that family businesses are no longer excluded from different governmental help. However, what has been conferred to me in my riding is that there are people who are because of certain rules. Could you give me a few more details about this? And because there's that date of the 15th of March, which means that for seasonal businesses, who's coming back before going out to sea, so people hadn't even started working yet. So are these people, we don't want to make sure that those people don't go through the cracks, like you've said so aptly.
Thank you very much for the question. And we actually structured the fish harvester benefit and the fish harvester grant because we recognize that many families, many fishing enterprises are family businesses. And we wanted to make sure that they were captured within those grants, whereas they would not have been under the wage subsidy or the business account. So we wanted to make sure, because many fishing vessels are generational. So we wanted to make sure they were captured, so they are within the harvester's benefit and the harvester's grant. The other thing you mentioned with regards to the seasons, you know, what's really important here, as I started to mention to Mr. Cormier, is that we have now structured EI, or we will be structuring EI, so that fish harvesters or fisheries EI benefits will be based on previous seasons, not on this year's catch. We want to make sure that we're looking after people. I know people were very concerned because of the shorter seasons in some cases, because of the delay in seasons in some cases, and because of the poor markets. So the EI benefit is going to help a lot of people make sure that they're covered for the coming year.
Donc, il y a quand même des gens qui...
So there are people who are not going to be covered in family businesses or in co-ops, working co-ops, depending on the dates at which this is happening. You have mentioned EI. This is also going to impact people who are in Eastern Quebec because certain changes have been announced for help and for a certain category of workers. Nevertheless, some of the workers are seasonal and they are working also in processing plants. And there are people who do not have access to EI. There are people who are not going to be able to know if they're going to get enough hours in order to get benefits. And their whole year will be a black hole, which means that they will have absolutely nothing to survive on unless they get the CERB prolonged. But that's really not going to feed them. Can you do something for those people who are facing absolute nothing as soon as their CERB runs out?
And this is actually a conversation that we continue to have right across the country, because the seasonal workers, although it affects processors and you know, seasonal workers in the fish and seafood sector, it's affecting seasonal workers right across the country in the tourism sector, in the agriculture sector. I have had many conversations with my counterpart at ESDC, Minister Qualtrough. We are working to address the gaps that we're seeing for seasonal workers and making sure that the ones who do not have access to EI do have some coverage. We'll continue to work on that program with her, because I know that seasonal workers are very concerned about making sure they have enough hours to qualify to make sure that they have an EI check at the end of the season.
J'espère également que ces gens-là...
I also hope that given the seasonal nature of the work, that this program will ensure that, and the modifications will make it so that these people, given that they don't have a link to their employment for a certain period of the year, as I was saying about family businesses, for some period of time there's no link to the business, and I hope they won't be penalized in the sense that they won't be able to receive the benefits. Can you confirm that these people with no link to an employment will be able to receive assistance, because they're the ones who come back year after year to work in these businesses?
We're continuing to work to make sure that we are addressing the gaps that we're seeing in the system. We have already made sure that the CERB has the emergency response benefit is available now to seasonal workers where it wasn't initially. We're continuing to assess programs as we go forward to make sure that anyone who is falling through the cracks, we make sure that they are covered. We will continue to work with our stakeholder groups, with industry, with making sure that we're hearing from a number of different people to address the concerns and make sure that people are looked after at this very, very difficult time.
Merci, parce qu'en effet...
Thank you. Because whether it be here in Quebec or in the East, I think it's a very sensitive issue. We talk about workers and businesses, but I think that more rightly, we should speak about entire communities who depend on these industries. So I hope that people will be supported so that these entire communities will be able to survive. I don't have a lot of time. I would have liked to deal with another subject. I would have liked to talk about the health issue. And I was wondering, why didn't you automatically suspend since the beginning of the crisis the Observer at Sea program?
We initially suspended the At-Sea Observer program for 45 days until people were able to get safety protocols in place. This program is extremely important because we make our decisions based on science, and that science is critical, that we absolutely have to collect it. It's part of a number of agreements that we have. We have to have the At-Sea Observer program. We are working with communities. We're trying to be flexible to make sure that safety measures are in place for both for the harvesters as well as for the observers. They have to both be happy with the situation before they will get on vessels. But we definitely need to have this program in place in order to maintain the science that drives our decision-making process.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now go to Mr. Jans for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here again today. Minister, first, I want to thank you for the important relief benefits that you announced for fishers and fish harvesters. My question around that is, when can fishers and fish harvesters expect money to start flowing through the harvesters benefit and the harvesters grant?
Thank you, Mr. Johns. We recognize right from the start that this is going to be a critical piece for harvesters, making sure that they have what they need. We are working diligently around the clock to get this out as quickly as possible, recognizing how important it is to harvesters. It is a brand new program, so it has to be built from the ground up. As you can imagine, it's not just a matter of writing a check to everybody. So we're continuing to work to make sure with ESDC and finance to make sure that we get this out as quickly as we can.
Just relaying, there's concerns about how quick they need that. As you can imagine, everybody's under so much pressure. Can you talk about new entrants and young fishers? What are you doing for them? Do you have any programs that you're going to announce to support them? Right now, they don't qualify for almost any of these programs.
As I said to Mr. Cormier earlier, with new entrants, I have heard that concern from a number of new entrants. There are a number of programs available to people who need help. We are continuing to look at how we can address issues. The Prime Minister has said on many occasions that nobody's going to be left behind. Right now, they do not qualify for the fish harvesters benefit because it is based on or their grant because it is based on previous season's earnings. So we will continue to look at ways that they can be supported.
I'm going to circle back. Yesterday, we were talking about restoration and habitat protection, how important it is. I'll give you an example. I've got a project in my riding, and I've talked to you about it, Couscousum. It's a project with the city of Courtenay, with the Comox Nation, with local community groups that have raised $1 million in the community. The province has put forward $1 million, and they need $3 million to buy this brownfield, a former mill site, to restore the area back to its natural habitat for salmon protection. However, this is one of the most important projects on Vancouver Island, and this group's getting told, well, there's no program in DFO to help them, that they should go to ISK, and then ISK tells them to go to ECC. They're getting bounced around. Yet the government can find an extra $35 million for Big Bar, which we support. This has to happen. But what we don't support is when they can find $17 billion for a pipeline, but they can't find $1 million to save this project. The deadline was supposed to be the end of the month to buy this property, and instead it's been moved to the end of August. We're looking at losing a really important project not just for salmon, but for reconciliation. What are you going to do to fix the gaps in your programs so that we don't let projects like this fall apart? And the province is going to end up with their $1 million back. They've vetted it. They know it's a good project.
Mr. Johns, as we've had this discussion before, I think it's important to recognize that DFO does have a suite of programs that this does not fall into them. We have had the conversation with regards to being involved with environment and climate change on this. We are looking at ways to support it, but the DFO does not have an ability to buy a piece of land. That's something that we've had this conversation around. If this is something that we can continue to look at, but at this point, there is no programs available for this. There are no programs available for this specific project.
Well, I'd say that's extremely disappointing because the salmon are going to lose, reconciliation's going to lose, and that project and that property is going to end up put on the market instead of saving salmon. Right now, we're in a salmon crisis. That's the most important restoration project on Vancouver Island. We talked about the salmon conservation stamp. We've asked the government to look at it. Right now it costs $6, generates $1.5 million a year. There has been an ask to raise that salmon stamp, which is something certainly the NDP typically doesn't support when it comes to user fees. But in light of the situation with our salmon, and this would go definitely straight to projects to help with restoration, will the minister consider raising the salmon stamp fee so those community organizations can get the support they need and do the great work that they're doing? Continue doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. We're continuing to work with a number of organizations, through a variety of means to make sure that we're addressing concerns that they have with regards to habitat restoration, with regards to, the wild Pacific salmon stock. I will take this and see if there is anything we can do, but maybe I can turn to my deputy and see if there's anything he can add here.
Yes, Monsieur le Président, j'aurais un appel au règlement.
Yes, I have a call to order. Maybe it's for clarification. I have a call to order. I would like to know if this session with Mrs. Minister, did this have to be exclusively on COVID-related issues or not? This is what I was assuming. I had the impression that we were drifting towards other subjects that had nothing to do with the COVID crisis.
I'm happy to
je pense pas que ce
clarify.
soit.
I don't think it's losing time, but I'm trying to know if that is what we're trying to do. I would like for the rules to be respected. That's all. Thank you.
I'll refer to the clerk just to see if it's relevant or if it's supposed to be strictly on COVID-19. Nancy? You're muted, Nancy. You were muted.
Sorry. Yes. My computer is very slow today. So the minister was invited on the COVID. Normally the members would ask questions related to the study. However, if the members ask outside the scope of the study and the minister wants to answer, it is up to the minister to answer the questions.
Merci.
Thank you.
Chair, how much time do I have left since
Can we go back
we're
to,
stopped?
we had asked my deputy to comment on the stamp?
Okay, which I'm more than happy to do. Certainly, I mean, the Pacific Salmon Foundation does very good work with the money that's currently coming from the stamp. We are looking at how to increase that. It will, however, require a regulatory change. So it's not something that we can do straight away. And we also have to obviously consult with others before doing that.
Great. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair? 1 minute. Okay. So this and how it relates to COVID is that there's a ton of people out of work right now. There's a salmon crisis right now that's happening, and we need to get people back to work. We need to get people on the ground doing the important work when it comes to restoration. Also, the government did make a promise to move to closed containment. This is an opportunity for the government to create a new normal, to start with that transition to closed containment and move the open net fish farms to closed containment and get people working. Will the government look at starting and embarking on following through with their promise to move to closed containment? This will give certainty to those people that are employed in that sector and to the sector itself. And this is an opportunity to create a new normal for aquaculture and for coastal British Columbia.
I'm committed to...
Sorry, Minister, all the time was used up in the question. If you could provide an answer in writing if it doesn't get asked further down the road during this meeting.
That'd be great.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Bragdon for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us again today. Minister, we just want to know, has the Seafood Stabilization Fund, the Fish Harvester Benefit, and the Fish Harvester Grant, are they now all open for applications as of today?
No, they are not. The Seafood Stabilization Fund is about to be rolled out probably within the next few days to a couple of weeks, but the Fish Harvester Benefit and the Fish Harvester Grant, as I had said, this is actually building a whole new program. It's going to take a little bit of time, but recognizing that we have been working extremely hard to get it out the door as quickly as possible. We're working with ESDC. I do want to just give a big shout out to our public servants who, you know, these are extremely trying times, and they have been working around the clock to make sure that we get this benefit out as quickly as possible because they know how important it is to our harvesters.
All right. Thank you. When will the details of the proposed EI changes for the fishers be announced? Do you have a time frame on that?
With regards to the EI changes, those are actually being worked on as well right now. They will be coming as soon as we have them available. We recognize that you know, people need to know these things, and that's why we're working as hard as we can to get it done as quickly as we can.
Will the EI changes require legislation?
No, they will not. Actually, I'm going to, I know that the Fish Harvester Benefit and the Fish Harvester Grant did not require legislation. I am not 100% sure on the EI changes. I don't know if the deputy has any information there that he may be able to share. I'm not sure if it requires a legislative change or not.
We would have to check with ESDC on that. We can certainly get back to the committee with that information.
I'd appreciate that. Yeah, because if it does require, obviously, a change in legislation, we'll need Parliament to be in session for sure, and to be able to bring about that change. And obviously, it's urgent at this point that we get the help in place that needs to be there for our seafood workers and harvesters. What are you doing to ensure that the EI changes actually fit the need of the fish and the seafood workers?
Well, the EI changes are actually going to be based on previous season's earnings. So what they would have received up until now would be basically the same again. They would be able to qualify based on previous seasons instead of this year. That's actually a really good thing. We know that last season was a very good season for most harvesters. With regards to British Columbia, where it was not a great season, we're making sure that they can look at previous seasons to that so that they're able to be better able to qualify for the EI benefits and get the biggest amount that they can for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister in your office has repeatedly given, and issued assurances to the fishers and their employees that relief programs like the wage subsidy and business account announced by the Trudeau government were available to them. And we as Conservatives have heard from harvesters from across the east to the west coast that they could not access these benefits. Testimony from Fisheries representatives provided to the Finance Committee on April 8th stated that the federal relief programs were not accessible by most fish and seafood sector operators and workers. Finally, on May 14th, the government announced the harvester benefit and grant admitted these supports were necessary because harvesters had not been able to access the wage subsidy and business account that the minister had told harvesters they could access. Minister, were the harvesters misled when you and your staff repeatedly told them that they could access the emergency wage subsidy and business account?
What we did from the start was we looked at what was necessary for the fish and seafood sector. We started out with the Seafood Stabilization Fund. Once the wage subsidy and the business account were announced, once we had a chance to look at what the qualifications were, recognizing that harvesters' businesses were set up differently, we moved very quickly to make sure that they were not lost in a gap. We saw a whole sector that was going to be impacted, and we worked really hard and very quickly to make sure that we addressed the concerns we heard from harvesters with regards to that. This is all because their enterprises are set up very differently than most businesses. People who live in fishing communities recognize that. We put in the fish and seafood sector are the only people who have a totally different program based on the fact that they were not able to qualify for the other benefits.
Minister,
thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Your time is up. We'll now go to Mr. Batiste for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Minister, for joining us today and all your advocacy for our fishermen and women. Our Prime Minister announced the government is introducing the fish harvesters benefit. As our fish harvesters have unique needs, it's an industry of seasons and catches, good years and bad years. But this year, it's been challenging to say the least. In my riding, one of the biggest issues facing our fishermen and harvesters is the lack of demand. And prices are real low. It's changed the dynamic of the local economy. It's been said that there may need to be a pivot to increased processing and a need for greater storage for longer periods of time. Can you give us an indication of what our government is doing to ensure that we have the ability to store more of our catch?
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. And I will say that, this was one of the first things we heard about when we saw the export markets collapsing back in January, February, that we knew that there could be a problem because we generally are a fresh market product. The fish and seafood sector it's live lobster, it's mussels and oysters, and making sure that the fish is fresh is what's been really important to our exports. So recognizing that, we put the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund in place. It's $62.5 million, and that's going to give processors the ability to increase capacity, the ability to put in freezers, the ability to put in fridges so that they can store for longer periods of time. And this is going to also help, of course, the harvesters, because now that things don't have to move quite as quickly, they're able to continue to sell their product.
Thank you, Minister, for that. Can you give me a sense of what has been our total new investment in dollars that our government has put forward to address the challenges of COVID-19?
With regards to just the fish harvester benefit, the fish harvester grant, and the Seafood Stabilization Fund, that's over $500 million. That is not including what we will have to do to make the changes to EI, the people who are now collecting CERB. That's just the fish and seafood sector. And I would say that I know that this is the largest infusion of cash into the sector since the cod moratorium.
Okay, thank you very much. In many cases, in the Mi'kmaq communities, in my writings, the community holds a communal license rather than a more commercial license holder. Are there any differences in eligibility for the fish harvester benefit between a Mi'kmaq communal license holder versus a commercial license holder? Just wanting to make sure that the Mi'kmaq harvesters are also included in this. Can you answer that?
They are absolutely included. It was something we wanted to make sure that there was no gaps when it came to Indigenous communities. I actually met recently with Chief Perry Bellegarde as well as the AFN to explain this to them. There was a lot of concerns that the Indigenous communities felt that they may be left out. Absolutely not. They very much qualify for these supports.
Okay. Time, Mr. Chair?
1.5 minutes.
Okay. Has the department done any internal estimates on how many individuals they expect will apply for the fish harvester's benefit? To me, that would be an important data point as we assess the overall impact of COVID-19 on the fishing industry. I'd be interested in hearing what other data points DFO is monitoring as they assess the overall impact of COVID-19.
I will say that anyone who holds an independent owner-operator license is eligible for the benefit, but perhaps I can turn to Deputy Sergeant and see if he has any other data he can share with us.
Yep, I'll pass this over to Jean-Guy Forgeron.
He can give me a written response. I know time is limited. And so that Ken, you can turn it to the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. We'll now go to Mr. Fast for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Minister and Mr. Chair. In the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, there's actually one group that has slipped through the cracks, and that's the sports fishery, especially our recreational fishing industry on the West Coast. Other than general support programs, there's actually no specifically targeted support like the ones you created for the commercial harvesters and processors. The salmon fishing closures that DFO imposed last year had a devastating impact on the 9,000 jobs the industry supports in BC, and of course the $1.1 billion of economic activity it sustains. And that was before the COVID pandemic hit. The impact will be even worse this year due to the restrictions that the guiding and outfitter industry must comply with due to the virus. Quite frankly, the industry just wants to go back to work. Now, it's my understanding that some time ago, Minister, the sport fishing industry placed before you a proposal to allow a minimum catch and retention Chinook fishery. At most, such a proposal will intercept less than 1% of any endangered Chinook run. Yet to date, the Sport Fish Advisory Board has received no response to their proposal. And meanwhile, the guides and outfitters can't book trips, right? Since they can't with certainty promise their clients the opportunity to actually fish. So Minister, this industry doesn't want handouts. They want to deliver a world-class sport fishing experience to their clients. So my question is this: why the delay in responding? And can the industry expect a response to their proposal this year?
Thank you, Mr. Fast, for the question. With regards to the sport fishery, we recognize that there are a number of challenges facing them this year, from everything from low salmon returns to, of course, COVID and how it has impacted the communities that support the sport fishery. We have made a number of benefits available to those businesses specifically. With regards to the question around the request for the Chinook management decisions have not been made yet. We are working on those as we speak, and they will be out in the near future.
Minister, what is the near future? I mean, this is an industry that has to plan ahead. The season really should have started by now, and they have no certainty at all. All they're asking for is a date on which you will provide them with a response to their proposal, an eminently sensible proposal.
So we actually did, I'm just checking my notes here, we actually did put interim fisheries management measures in place for the Chinook fishery on April 1st to allow time for a technical review of the 2019 measures to make sure that what we had done in 2019 and how it was going to impact. We're also looking at consulting with a variety of groups, but the decisions are going to be based on what we hear from our evaluations, and they will be coming, as I said, very, very soon.
What does very soon mean? Really, we do need certainty on this. And
they will be coming as soon as we have all of the information we need to make that decision.
Well, they're not going to be very happy with that answer, Minister. I have a second question. As you know, Minister, one way to address the protection of endangered salmon is to increase the marking of hatchery fish to ensure sport fishers have plenty of fish to keep and take home without endangering the recovery of the wild salmon. Yet in BC, only a very small number of hatchery fish are actually marked, even though many times more are released into the wild. This makes it difficult for anglers to determine if the fish they've caught are actually of hatchery origin. Now, your department's policy has been to either shut down the fishery or allow for a very limited catch and release opportunity. And I believe we can do better, because if you look at Washington State, and you are familiar with Washington State, they mark 100% of their hatchery fish, which allows their industry to compete unfairly with our recreational fishing industry here. So how is that fair? How does that promote Canada's economy and our national interest? A very small investment in marking fish would go miles in providing our industry with the boost it needs. So when will you increase the number of hatchery fish that are marked for catch and retention? And when will you begin to listen to the concerns of the struggling industry?
Mr. Fast, I have been listening to the industry since I was first appointed to this ministry. I will also say that I am not opposed to a hatchery fishery. However, there are a number of challenges that have to be addressed first. These are, as I said yesterday, there's a concern around data collection. There's a concern around consultations with First Nations. There's concerns around the genetic releasing hatchery fish in with and how it will impact the wild Pacific salmon stock. These are all things that we have to do. We have started pilot programs with regards to a marked selective, with regards to marked fishery. We will continue to do the work that is needed to be done, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not something that's going to solve all of the problems for the wild Pacific salmon. And we're making sure that we're taking these measures very seriously. But I will say, I want to thank the Sport Fishing Association for the great work that they do. And, we will continue to work with them to as we go forward, to find solutions. But there are a lot of questions that need to be answered before that fishery can take place.
Minister, these fish are being released into the wild.
Up,
all they need to be, all that needs to be done needs to be marked.
Mr. Fest, your time is up. It's gone well over, actually. Mr. Morrissey, for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Minister, while you're being questioned here today before the committee on how to get the financial assistance out the door faster, it's interesting for the committee to note that the Conservative opposition in the House of Commons denied consent to move a very important bill that would expedite and allow many more people to be included in financial assistance that need it. My question to you is, Madam Minister, your riding, like mine, has extensive coastal communities that depend so heavily on the fishery for their economic well-being. So my question is two. One, I want to know the impact, if it is negative impact, maybe having on the ability to provide enforcement and protection of the valuable fisheries, as well as the ability for your department to process small craft harbor capital projects. Is COVID-19 having an impact on these two areas? And at the same time, could you also comment on how your department is positioned today versus years ago in the ability to provide protection for these fisheries, as well as the importance of small craft harbors? Because without these two, we would not have a successful fishery in our small rural coastal communities.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey, and you are correct. I come from a small rural coastal community. It's something that that has driven my passion for this industry from day one. I grew up in it. With regards to small craft harbors specifically, we know that these are the economic drivers of our rural coastal communities. They are a necessary part of who we are and what we do. The fishery relies on them. It's our highways. We have invested significantly as a government in small craft harbors. We will continue to look at the best ways forward to address the long-term needs. Up until there had not been an increase in small craft harbor funding for over 20 years until we formed the government. And in that time, of course, small craft harbors continued to deteriorate. With regards to fisheries officers, because of the work that we as a government have done on the Fisheries Act, we are going to be able to increase the important role that fisheries officers play. We're going to be able to, we've increased the staff at DFO by 300 for the science. And these are all fundings that has come because of our government. We will not leave our fishing communities behind. We know how important they are to our way of life. Previous governments have done that, and we will not do that.
Thank you, Minister. If I could just go back and if you could focus again on, so you're confident that your department, as we go through the pandemic caused by COVID-19, you still have the ability to ensure that adequate protection and enforcement is taking place across, especially in those areas that demand high levels of enforcement and protection in the fishery?
So the health and safety of fisheries officers has been a priority in the industry. We've continued to make sure that they are able to work in the fields, on the water, and wherever they're needed during this crisis. The standard operating procedures have been put in place for all types of operations, such as vessel patrols, air patrols. We're making sure that the fisheries officers have what they need in terms of protection and protocols in place, and we'll continue to do that as well as with small craft harbors. I want to thank the harbor authorities who have also put protocols in place to make sure that the people who are working on the wharves are the people that need to be there, and we'll continue to monitor those situations and make sure that the employees of DFO have what they need to stay protected and to continue to do the extremely vital work that they've always done.
Mr. Chair, my time?
1 minute.
Thank you. Madam Minister, in my elected career, I depend heavily on the value of empirical data and science-related information to make decisions. And if our fisheries are going to be successful in the future, which again goes back to the success of our coastal communities, then we must ensure that we have a federal department that has the resources to ensure that we have adequate science data to make those decisions. Could you comment briefly on, even though we're focused on delivering in the pandemic and through COVID-19, that you will not lose focus, your department will not lose focus on ensuring that that we have those resources going forward?
We continue to make all of our decisions based on science. The previous Conservative government cut the science out of DFO. We've rehired almost 300 scientists to make sure that we have that information available to us. Fisheries management decisions have to be made on the best available science to us, and we're going to continue to do that. Was that my time? Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. We'll now go to Madame Gill for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to get back to the discussion we were having a little while ago. Madam Minister and myself, we talked about the sea observers, and these are subjects that monopolized our attention during the pandemic, and it's a question of the economy and the question of health. We have certain ridings. I have communities that are very isolated, very vulnerable, either because of the age or the health conditions of the various people. We also have Inuit and Indigenous communities along the St. Lawrence River. And there's been a lot of difficulties in communications when it comes to health and sanitary conditions. I would like to understand how come there have been no directives given to all of these different communities, because they are which means that they are asking for to put back the season, the fishing season.
I'm sorry, I had a bit of a problem there when I cut out a bit. I don't know if it was my internet. Is there a possibility, Mr. McDonald, to have the question asked again?
Madame Gill, est-ce que vous pourriez reposer votre question? Il y a eu un petit problème. Okay, without the long preamble. Yes, okay, fine. What I was saying, Madam Jordan, is that our communities are vulnerable, and two subjects were at the forefront during this pandemic, the economy and the question of health. We talked about the observers on sea who have helped out. But there's the question of health guidelines, which have not been given to the communities. There's not been a lot of information. There have been weeks of work here. And it means that the communities have asked, in certain cases, they've been asked the fishing season to be put back. So I would like to understand why is there been an absence of sanitary guidelines for the fishermen in these coastal communities? Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Gill. And I will say that, we have been working very hard with harvesters as well as with processors to make sure that they had the time necessary to put the health and safety protocols in place. It was very difficult to make sure that, we worked with the province, we make sure we work with the stakeholders. We know that there are communities that were a little bit more vulnerable. We were very flexible in terms of opening dates of seasons so that they could get the protocols that they needed to have in place. I've met regularly with Minister Lamontagne from Quebec with regards to what Quebec was doing in terms of putting those protocols in place. Of course, the province is responsible for the processing facilities and making sure that they have what they need. But Quebec actually was very good at setting a standard for having good safety protocols in their facilities. And we continue to meet with him every week to find out what was necessary, and we continue to work with CFIA as well.
Thank you, Madam Gill. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes, please, or less.
Thank you. Minister, the funds that you've committed to, the relief to supporting fishers in the fishing industry during COVID-19 will certainly provide help to Indigenous communities and to fishers. There's an opportunity to make a bigger impact, a longer impact, by ensuring that the funds remaining in the Pacific Salmon Treaty Mitigation Fund are directed at the people and communities who were most impacted by the reductions in the Chinook harvest on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Nuu-Chulnut Nations and the Area G harvesters have been working through West Coast Aquatic Governance Board to develop a proposal of how to spend the roughly $8 to $10 million we're told that's left in the fund that could definitely benefit the fishing industry right now in those communities on the west coast of Vancouver Island. The department could make significant steps towards reconciliation with the Nuu-Chulnut if they were to recognize the importance of these mitigation funds for rebuilding the fishing economy on the west coast of Vancouver Island, including restoration. Will you do that? Will you do everything you can to get that money to those fishers and those communities in need?
First of all, Mr. Johns, I think I need to clarify that there isn't actually money left in there. The money that is in that account or in that for those programs is earmarked for programs already that we're committed to. So the money is there, but it has not been spent yet, simply because the programs have not rolled out yet. So there is no pot of money left over. However, what I will say is that we are continuing to work with our coastal communities through BC Shrift, through coastal restoration funds, to put programs in place, as well as the programs that I've already talked about today with regards to the harvester benefit and the harvester grant. And Deputy Minister Sargent, I'm not sure if you have anything there.
I think just for me, and I really want to emphasize this, those harvesters, those were the ones that were impacted. by taking a reduction. So I hope the government, as they're spending that money through those programs, that they're going to target those fishers most impacted in those communities. Last question, Minister, is around licensing. Can you tell me, a lot of fishers have asked for relief on licensing because they either can't fish because of the price or because of COVID. Can you talk about what you're going to do? Are you going to honor their request for relief on licensing?
Relief on licensing was something that we heard about a great deal. We actually went with the Fish Harvester Grant that could be used for a number of different things, and that money can be used for licensing fees.
Thank you. We'll now go on to Mr. D'Entremont for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the basement, Chez D'Entremont. Great to see all of you. Minister, it's always good to see you as well. I'm not going to go without saying a few quick words about Mr. Morrissey's question or his little comment earlier. What I saw in the House earlier today was the government House leader unable to deliver consensus. I guess it's either the Liberal way or the highway. When it's unfortunate to see that happen in our House when the bills are important to us. So I'll move on. When it comes to the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund, I know a number of companies that have ton of surplus space. Has DFO done a survey of existing capacity, especially in Southwest, South Shore, in Nova Scotia?
I'm actually going to turn that question to my deputy, please.
Yes, the Seafood Stabilization Fund is a program that we're delivering in partnership with the regional agencies. And actually, when we put this together, we worked very closely with them, and in particular in your part of the world, of course, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. And so they were the ones that assessed the storage capacity issues in that part of the world.
Okay, because from what I've seen, I have two large areas that can be used, can be turned on. They just need to know how they can access that fund. It's existing facilities in Southwest Nova Scotia. One's up in Digby County, of course. The other one's in the Pubnicos. So there is existing capacity within our system. So I'm just wondering, how individuals, businesses would be able to access that fund, or at least, hey, we have space available.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry, Mr. D'Entremont.
It's okay.
I've known you a long time. I would suggest that they reach out to ACOA directly. As we said, these programs are being developed and delivered through the regional development agencies because they work with these organizations all the time. They know them, and they may be able to help them very quickly.
Okay, and this is, like I said, it's existing, so they don't need ACOA's money necessarily. They just need operating so that they can hold on to some of that frozen product. But if I look at the issue of live capacity, especially in Southwest Nova Scotia, how much live capacity do we actually have? And I know it's in the multi-millions of pounds, so I'm just wondering if the department has a feel of how much that is.
Deputy, do you have an answer to that
No,
question?
we don't, but we'd be happy to get back to you with after we've asked a few questions.
All right, and maybe even to add to that one as well, there are a number of facilities that have been built within the last 12 months, probably prior to COVID, expecting, of course, a different season than what they've expected. Would they be able to access some of the funding as well?
The funding, of course, is to build capacity in places. I'm not sure. Those are questions that ACOA could probably answer. I don't know, Deputy, if you have anything else you can add there.
No, just to say that storage capacity varies quite a bit across the region. So, for instance, I think in New Brunswick, for instance, there is more of a shortage. And as the Minister said, the funds are to build new capacity if necessary, but the funds can also be used for a variety of other things. It's not just for storage capacity at all. New equipment, for instance, inventory costs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if you can, understand from a new entrant or someone that just sort of expanded their systems, just basically put in new grading systems, put in new water treatment systems in order to hold lobsters longer, and this program comes along after they've done all of that construction. So I'm just wondering if there's a way for them to go back and say, hey, listen, I won't want all the money, but maybe a little bit of help to keep them alive for the next 6 months to a year.
So, Mr. D'Entremont, with regards to that, the whole point of the programs that we've put in place is to get people through this very difficult time. This is unprecedented challenges within the sector. We're seeing, fishers who have not seen this kind of market for years and years, as you know, as someone who comes from an area that relies heavily on it. So we want to make sure that what we're putting in place is able to get us through this very difficult time so that the industry can not only come back after COVID-19, but come back strong.
Okay, I don't want to create two playing fields where you have the group that got money through COVID and you got the money that spent all of their money to get things set up in the meantime. A quick point, if I can make one, 3334 has the highest lobster licensing fee of $1,900. It would go a long ways from the department to waive or substantially waive that fee. Has that been in any discussions with DFO?
We have discussed the waiving of license fees. What we went with was coming up with the Fish Harvesters Grant, which they can use for a multitude of reasons, and one of them would be to use the $10,000 to pay their license fees.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Minister, for being here. Wanted to get back to the issue that arose in the House of Commons today. Bill 17 was due to come forward, and it was due to handle the legislation necessary to get the support out to disabled people, but as well there was going to be some changes to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, especially to deal with irregularly employed people. Now, would that have reflected on the benefits, the support that would have been available to fishers or to the industry, to the sector?
So they would not have impacted the fish harvester benefit or the fish harvester grant, but it is unfortunate because one of the things we have heard a great deal is that seasonal industries need support, and this bill would have given it to them. So it is unfortunate that that the Conservatives have stopped us from making sure that they're getting the support they need through the wage subsidy, the seasonal workers.
Okay, because we certainly have heard from everybody, and I think everybody agrees that there's a sense of urgency here to deliver supports to people who need them. There was an offer today to split out the disabled and the other work from some of the things that the opposition found problematic. But again, that didn't receive the support in Parliament that it needed to move forward in an expeditious manner today. Are there workarounds necessary then for the absence of this legislation?
So the fish harvester benefit and the fish harvester grant were not part of this legislation. It did not require legislation on its own, so they will still go ahead. It is unfortunate, though, because many seasonal workers will be caught up in this legislation not going forward, and that will include people who did not qualify for the fish harvester benefit or the fish harvester grant.
Let's look hopefully to a brighter future. And of course, the fishery on the East Coast has been a bright spot in Canada, certainly compared with our home on the West Coast. But everybody now is suffering again from the collapse of the local market, the fresh market, etc. What plans will there be in place to try and restore these markets, and particularly the international trade, which is also, of course, taken a real hit because of the pandemic?
So I think there's a number of things there, Mr. Hardy. First of all, we have seen the collapse of the export market since early in January. The fish and seafood sector was one of the first sectors that were impacted by COVID-19. We have been working to try and develop new ways of asking people to support local and making sure that people eat Canadian seafood. We as Canadians don't eat enough seafood, so I think that everyone should be promoting that as much as possible to support our local industries. We continue to explore where markets could be developed, but of course, that's a different department than mine. We are looking to, make sure that we have the capacity in the processing facilities to, store and hold product longer. Looking at value added, that's another big thing that's necessary. One of the industries in BC, for example, the oyster industry. When we spoke to one oyster producer who wants to go from a fresh product to a smoked product because he knows that he has a longer shelf life and more of an ability to sell domestically if he does. So those are the kinds of innovative ideas that we're supporting and we're looking for to make sure that we can get through this very difficult time.
Now, we certainly have taken some steps to, improve the storage capacity, but what happens to, if you like, the quality and the value of the product? I mean, obviously, even your fridge at home, there'll be an end date on that potato salad at the back there. At what point beyond which, if this pandemic continues, that even storage isn't really going to be helpful in maintaining incomes?
So what we've done this year is with the availability of the Fish Harvester Benefit and the Fish Harvester Grant, we have given enterprises the ability to make a business decision based on the fact that they will still have some income, whether they choose not to fish, whether they choose to fish less, or whether they continue to fish. Now, at least they know they will have some income. With regards to markets, we are seeing a bit of an increase in some of the export markets. The Asian markets are starting to open up. Some of the restaurants in the U.S. are starting to open up. I think that one of the things we have to do also is work together with our provinces, with the provinces and territories, with the Seafood Opportunities Fund as a way of marketing fresh seafood within Canada.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Bragdon for 5 minutes or less. I understand you may be sharing your time, and that'll be up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just would like to follow back up on when we were talking about the various programs that have been announced and starting to be put in place, yet to be fully accessible to the harvesters. We've noticed and observed that other governments like in Australia and Britain were able to announce and deliver support for their fish and seafood sectors as early as April 1st. Why did it take so long to provide relief for the Canadian fish harvesters?
Actually, I would disagree with that statement, Mr. Bragdon. We listened very diligently. We got the announcement made as quickly as possible, and now we're working to get those measures out the door. This is building a brand new program. It's not something that you can turn around on overnight. We are working with ESDC, who is of course responsible for the delivery of the program, to make sure we have everything in place that is needed. Harvesters can rest assured that the money is there and it's coming. And yes, they need it, and we are working to make sure that they get it as quickly as possible.
Again, and not to belabor the point, it's just that obviously comparable nations around the world are all faced with unprecedented circumstances and unbelievable situations arising from COVID-19, and we're able to deliver that support, it seems to be in a more efficient and timely manner. So we're hearing from the fishermen and from the harvesters that aid is needed sooner rather than later, for sure. Minister, does the government also, as a result of the weak demands in the market right now, and as much as we need to be doing what we can on the storage side, when it comes to the need for increasing demand or helping demand and helping mitigate some of the damages being caused because of the lessened demand as a result of COVID, does the government have any plan to promote the recovery of fish and seafood sectors by promoting trade and increased domestic consumption?
Yes, I mean that was what I was just talking to Mr. Hardy about. Was I've actually been working with my provincial counterparts on the East Coast as well as the West Coast to talk about ways that we can work together to market fresh seafood or seafood within Canada to make sure that people recognize that it is an extremely vital part of our food chain and that it is an excellent source of protein. We're working together with our, like I said, with our provincial counterparts to do some marketing. With regards to international, we are also looking at ways that we can continue to build on our export markets, knowing that right now they are not very good, but that at some point they have to come back, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can market our seafood overseas as well.
Okay. Minister, on April 3rd, you stated that basically it was going to be up to individual areas to determine if the fishermen wanted to delay their season openings or stay on the shore. And while this commitment held true for harvesters in certain areas, maybe not in other areas, they were delayed. These decisions added to some uncertainty that was faced by the sectors and the Canadians that they employ. I heard from one harvester in Tignish, Prince Edward Island. He told, quote, this is a quote from, "Losing our first 2 weeks is a massive blow. This is the period where we catch our biggest landings." Fisheries representatives also warned that the season's delays could create a surge of the harvest that have caused the additional challenges for harvesters and processors we see today. So why was the commitment made to fishermen that they would determine if there would be delays in season openings? Why was that broken, that commitment to allow them to kind of lead that, and it got moved away from them?
Actually, Mr. Bragdon, it was not broken. We took a number of things into consideration when it came to the delays of seasons, and with regards to the Gulf specifically, the 4 areas in the Gulf, we had various requests for opening dates. We also had, though, the one request that was consistent was that they all opened on the same day, recognizing that processors were not ready because of health protocols that had to be put in place. The delay had to be put in place till the 15th of May because that was when the processors would be ready. That was when the majority of harvesters wanted to go. And the harvesters in those areas all said that no matter what the date was, they had to go on the same date. It was a decision that was made in consultation with harvesters, with the industry, with the stakeholders, with processors, with buyers. These are all things that are taken into consideration when we make these decisions.
Minister,
thank you, Mr. Bragdon.
Okay.
Your time is up. We'll now go to Mr. Cormier for 5 minutes or less, please.
Merci.
Thank you. And I would like to add to the comments made by Mr. Bragdon. This is exactly what happened. As the minister said, the plants had to put in health and safety measures. We had cases in Quebec of COVID-19, so we had to make sure that the plants and the had to be set up to ensure health and safety measures. And this is why the fishing season had to be pushed back. And now, if we talk about the pushing back of the date, Madam Minister, over the past 4 years, as you know, the presence of right whales in the Gulf of St. Lawrence has had a significant impact on the industry and on our communities as well. This year, it hasn't been easy, but Madam Minister, I'd like to thank you because this year measures have been the static zone was removed, and we have dynamic zones, and this is because of associations and the industry that suggested these measures. We also implemented icebreakers, the Canadian Coast Guard icebreakers, so this was earlier than normal, and also there was a contract with another icebreaker that opened up the port so that the season could start earlier. And thank you very much for that, Madam Minister. But it's not easy this year. As you know, there are right whales in the Gulf, and there are many fishing zones that had to close. Over the past 4 years, we've always been able to adapt. We've listened to the industry. We've tried to make sure that measures would be adapted for the whales, but not that we lose the U.S. market, for example, and elsewhere in the world. So, Madam Minister, as you know, the harvesters are frustrated, but also the communities are suffering. And I'd like to ask you, are you prepared, as we did over the past 4 years, to look at measures for next year to see if we can improve measures for the protection of right whales, make it so that harvesters are able to bring in their quota, but also that employees and communities that depend on this fishery are able to live and survive because these regions need the fisheries?
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. And I will say that the harvesters in your area have faced a number of challenges this year with regards to not only COVID-19, but weather delays, ice, and of course now with the whales returning to the area. I think that one of the things that we have done as a government and as a department over the past number of years is we've we've addressed the whale measures in terms of every season. We look at what works, what doesn't, how we can make it better. We know we need to protect the whales for a number of reasons, not only because they're an endangered species, but because it's, it's extremely important for us with our agreements with the United States for export markets. And we'll continue to do that. We want to work with the industry. They were the ones who worked so hard with us to come up with the measures that we put in place this year to protect the whales. And we'll continue to do that. I think it's extremely important that we continue to have those conversations. And I will say that, I understand that there are challenges this year. I also understand that they've close to 80% of their quota, so it is good. But I know that it's challenging with the closures because of the whales.
Thank you, Minister, and again, thank you for all the work that you did this year for having the Coast Guard here, like ASAP, and the third-party agreement with our icebreaker. Also, another thing I want to go back, Minister, is the EIPs, because I heard some conservative member on the committee speaking about EI, all of a sudden they all want fishermen and seasonal worker to have EI, when in 2013, I don't know if everybody remember, but the Harper government put the worst EI reform in place that hurt our region and hurt our seasonal industry. We said in the program that we just announced, Minister, that we will look at the EI for fishermen based on their previous year. But as you know, also there's deckman also that comes into play, and other seasonal workers in fish plant industry also. My question is, first, you said that EI will be based on previous year, but also the Prime Minister said nobody will be left behind. So I hope that my father was a deckman, and that we will think about those person also. If you can just comment on that and where you are in discussion with regarding that EIPs.
Sure, and I would like to make a correction. The EI for fish harvesters will be based on previous seasons, not necessarily the previous year. That is going to be beneficial to the people on the West Coast who did not have a great season last year. We want to make sure that they're well covered. And the other thing with regards to seasonal workers, as I said earlier, this is a much bigger conversation that we're having with ESDC. Seasonal workers need to make sure that they're covered as well, and that goes for the agriculture sector. It goes for hospitality industry, and of course, it impacts the fish and seafood sector. So I have been in conversation with Minister Qualtrough. I know that she is working very hard to address these challenges because, as I've said, no one will be left behind.
How much time, Mr. Chair?
16 seconds, so you probably haven't got time to ask or get an answer. I apologize for that, but we'll move on. We may get another round yet. Madam Gill, for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the Minister to have been available with her team during the crisis. We've had some good communication exchanges. Now, in terms of what is taking place for harvesters, there are some difficulties in terms of communication. There was an example when we received a communique from the Minister that it said when there was a request to postpone the season, the request had been denied. So harvesters were really getting ready. It was happening on a Wednesday, I think, and they were really getting ready just before they had to leave. And at the time when they had to leave, then we received some piece of news, another information that actually the request was accepted. So everything is put on pause, and it was quite hard for the communities. I've spoke about, of course, the economic situation, but also communication. And I would like to know whether the Minister has been looking at communication with the various harvesters and elected representatives if there's another crisis, but we need to make sure that communications are improved.
Gil, and I will say that we have worked diligently with harvesters, with processors, with communities, recognizing that they're the people on the ground who know what they need. I'm a little confused though, because you said that someone requested a delay and did not get it, because most of the delays that were requested were granted. So I would like to follow up maybe with you on that one, unless it was a delay that was a second delay. I don't know if maybe Deputy Sergeant, of something specific there, or Madame Gill, if you can clarify that.
Well, we heard two different communications that were saying different things. The first one would say that postponing the season was refused. We received it in English, and that communications that were spreading this on the one hand, and on the other hand, we heard that no, the season was put on pause for the time being for fisheries. So we had two different type of information at the same time, which actually created some confusion and some fear among the various communities. It was Area 15 in Quebec.
Not familiar with that specific problem. I will look into it though and get back to you and find out. I will tell you we do work very hard to make sure that the communications that we put out are correct. We do work very hard to make sure that the communities are listened to, that the harvesters are well consulted on what they want, and we try and do everything we can to work with industry to make sure that they're getting their needs addressed. Deputy Sergeant, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add there, or if it's something that we can follow up with.
It's certainly something we'd be very happy to follow up on. We want to make sure that our communications are clear.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, again for being here today. Minister, yesterday we talked about the Cohen Commission, and you talked about that your government is moving on all of the recommendations of the Cohen Commission. Recommendation number 19 falls within this COVID window. It says on September 30th, 2020, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans should prohibit net pen salmon farming in the Discovery Islands, Fish Health Zone, Subzone 3.2, unless he or she is satisfied that such farms pose at most a minimal risk of serious harm to the health of migrating Fraser River sockeye salmon. And the Minister's decision should summarize the information relied on and include detailed reasons. The decision should be published on the Department of Fisheries and Oceans website. There's sea louse, 6 sea louse found on the average migrating salmon right now. So I'm concerned, Minister, what decision are you going to be making? Will you be following through with this recommendation on the date of September 30th?
Can I turn that one to the Deputy, please?
Yep, we're busy compiling risk assessments right now in order to support that particular announcement. We're not ready to make it yet, but that's certainly the date that we're working to.
Okay, it's 3.5 months out, so it's concerning the people, of course, of the Broughton. Also, in terms of the dual role, a campaign promise in 2015, the government said it would restore its role to protect wild salmon and no longer be the agent for the aquaculture industry. Can the Minister comment on where the government's at on this promise that's 5 years old?
Thank you, Mr. Johns. As I said yesterday, I'm committed to working with the provinces and with Indigenous communities to move forward responsibly to transition open net pen farming on coastal British Columbia. A change like this requires cooperation. It requires consultation. Those are all things that we're working to do right now. And it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. But we are.
It's been 5 years, so that's longer than overnight. And Minister, can you comment back to Mr. Fass's question about sport fishers and recreation? They're waiting for some additional help. The rollout, the current government rollout, is not enough. They've asked for support, whether it's even marking fish. Having some support on the salmon stamp. Will you honor any of the requests from the sports sector and make sure that they can get through the winter so that next year they can fish, and maybe extending EI for them like you are for the commercial fleet? Can you make sure that you're following through with them to support them in this difficult time?
A quick answer, please.
I'm sorry, but recreational fishers would not qualify for EI. EI is for commercial enterprises, not recreational. Agreed. However, the people who support the industry, people, for example, the guides, the people who work within the industry, they are eligible for things like the CERB. They're eligible for the business account.
They need more. They need extra help.
Your time is up, Mr. Johns. Now to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here for the questions. I want to quote some of your own words from today, and that is that the programs are here to help through this difficult time. Unfortunately, time is marching on. In fact, not through just March, but now April, May, and into June. Early on, you indicated that the fisheries sector would be eligible for the CEWS program and the business account program. That turned out to be not the case. Now you've announced the Seafood Stabilization Fund and the Fish Harvesters Grant. Both of those announcements have been out, but not a penny has flowed. That's not helping harvesters and processors through these difficult times. when can fish harvesters and processors expect to see those applications open online and to see dollars flowing after those applications are open?
Thank you. And then, Mr. Arnold, as I have said on a number of occasions today, this is a brand new program. It's something that has to be built from the ground up. We are working with ESDC, who is responsible for the program, to make sure that it is rolled out as quickly as possible. We're doing everything that we have to do to make sure that it gets rolled out quickly. The thing that harvesters can be assured of is that the money is coming. It is there. It's $500 million, almost
Thank
$500
you,
million.
Minister. That is not helping the harvesters and processors through these difficult times. It will be after difficult times. During the study of regulations of BC fisheries, there was indications of foreign entities being able to buy up licenses out there. Minister, are you at all concerned that these problems may grow during this unprecedented time in Canada when fish processing businesses are finding themselves in difficult times, and that foreign ownership by state-owned entities may become a problem? And what is your department doing to prevent it?
Thank you, Mr. Arnold, for the question. That is something that we are very much apprised of. It's something that we are monitoring. We will make sure that we're taking everything that is as a company has to be 51% Canadian owned. We work with people at ISED to make sure that anything that is transferred is actually within the regulations.
Okay, thank you, Minister. You've been questioned a number of times about the West Coast fisheries, particularly the sport fishery. I refer to it as a public food fishery because many on the West Coast actually harvest those fish for their dinner tables. All that's really needed there is a decision by you to enable those fisheries to take place. The Sport Fish Advisory Board, which has been in place for years, has agreed on the recommendation to open those market selective fisheries. It really is an enabling factor that you yourself could make a difference on if you chose to. The delays through the explanation that you need the data, the science, it's hurting people on the ground. Fishing guides, fishermen that are families that simply want to go out and put food on their table. Why has there been such a delay in making a decision?
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. And as I have said, I am not adverse to a market selective fishery. I think that there is a great opportunity there. However, there are a number of concerns that we have with regards to that we want to make sure we address before that becomes a reality. We are doing some pilot projects now in specific areas with hatchery fish. There are concerns within First Nations communities. There are concerns within environmental groups about the impacts that hatchery fish would have on wild Pacific salmon stocks. These are all things that have to be taken into consideration. It's not as cut and dry as you seem to think, and it's also not a silver bullet to all of the challenges that the wild Pacific salmon are facing right now.
No, but it certainly could be a big help, Minister, if you would move that priority up. I spoke with you directly on that early in, I believe it was either late March or early April, and I hope you realize the importance of that to the West Coast fisheries. Minister, if you could provide clarification either today or in writing about whether the EI changes that are going to need to be made so that fish harvesters and their crew are eligible for EI, whether that is going to require legislation, and if so, with the House of Commons and Parliament being basically shut down by your Prime Minister, how is that going to take place if it's going to require legislation?
As I said earlier, I'm not sure if it does require legislation. We will definitely look into that and follow up.
Thank you. We'll now go on to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for being here, Minister. Well, Parliament took a shot at it this afternoon, and it didn't work so well. So we're going to need to do a little bit more consensus building, I think, amongst our opposition colleagues to get some of these things done. I'll be splitting my time with Mr. Cormier. He'll want to get a question in. In the work that's been done, and we really have to focus on the East Coast where there are some major processing plants. We don't have major processing plants so much on the West Coast anymore. But have you noticed, Minister, whether or not those plants are going to have to, in the longer run, make some significant changes to their physical plant in order to, maintain the social distancing? In other words, in order to operate safely, so the workers, unlike in the beef and pork sector, don't get sick?
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. That's a really important question. And I will say that processors have been working very diligently to put measures in place to make sure that their workers are protected. Some of them have been very innovative in some of the things they've been doing. They've been bringing in trailers. They've been putting so that people can socially distance at break times. They're putting in plexiglass between workers. These are all things that are going to be ongoing. And of course, we don't know how long, COVID-19 challenges will last until we have a vaccine. So these are all measures that are being put in place now, but they're going to definitely be beneficial to the processing sector for the long run.
Have the processors been made aware that there's always the risk of another wave? As well, what have we heard from the provincial health authorities about, again, the safeguards being put in place? And also, have there been any reported cases of COVID-19 amongst workers at processors?
With regards to the provinces, I meet weekly. I was meeting weekly with my provincial counterparts on the East Coast, and now it's biweekly for about the first 3 months. It's just recently moved to biweekly. We've had a lot of good discussions about what the processing sector, of course, the province is responsible for the processing sector and making sure they have the protocols in place. They have been very diligent working within the industry themselves. So they recognize the importance of the fish and seafood sector to our coastal communities. So they want to make sure they're doing everything they can to support them. With regards to cases, I'm going to turn to the deputy here. I'm not sure if there have been any reported cases of COVID. I believe in Quebec there was, but I might be wrong on that. So I'll turn to the deputy.
Yeah, we don't have confirmation. I know that there were suspected cases in one instance in Quebec, but I don't know if that case was actually confirmed.
All right, thank you for that. We haven't talked a lot about the far north or the freshwater fishery, Great Lakes and Lake Winnipeg. What oversight have you had on those areas? What issues have you heard come up, and what has been your response?
So with regards to the freshwater inland fisheries, first of all, the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund is available to the western, to the prairies as well, so they're for inland processors. The fish harvester benefit is available to all harvesters in the country who have a valid license, so also in Ontario. And of course, in Ontario, for processors there, they have the ability to access the RDAs who are going to have programs similar to the Seafood Stabilization Fund. We're making sure that we're addressing all of the concerns we're hearing right across the country.
Thank you. Now I'm going to turn, as promised, the last minute over to Mr. Cormier.
Alors, merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Madam Minister. You have said that we had to work in collaboration, and that's also done with territories and provinces. Fisheries isn't just in the federal area, but provinces also have their role to play. Since the beginning of the pandemic here in New Brunswick, the Prime Minister there, the Premier, is the last one to help his citizens. And when I hear Conservative members ask EI release, they've asked them in 2013, and we had the absolute worst reform ever of EI, and that really hurt our harvesters. I wonder, and the Prime Minister had also said that they were living on an EI system of 1042 that doesn't exist anymore. Have you talked about this with the provincial minister for fisheries and see what kind of money there was for New Brunswick harvesters at this particular time?
I will say that the conversations I've had with the provincial ministers have been very beneficial. They are people who I've done a lot of work with to come up with the benefits. They've been very supportive of the harvester benefits as well as the grant and the EI changes. They recognize how important that is. I will say also though that it's critical that we get this out the door as quickly as possible. We know that the harvesters are in need of this money. With regards to the provinces, one of the things, of course, with New Brunswick that was a bit of a challenge was they're not allowing temporary foreign workers in whenever our processing facilities desperately needed them. That also set us back a bit, but we know that they made those decisions based on what they needed, but our processors desperately needed temporary foreign workers, and they were not able to get them at the very start of the pandemic.
Thank you, Minister. We now go to Mr. Bragdon for 5 minutes or less, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm relinquishing my time to Mr. D'Entremont.
When you're ready, Mr. D'Entremont.
Thank you so much. And, to Mr. Hardy, thank you for that comment that we all do need to find consensus. And it does work with all members of the House of Commons to make that happen. So I do want to thank them for that comment on it. Listen, scallop fishermen are going fishing soon, since we're all talking about our own pedigree. My father was a scallop fisherman for many, many years. And, we know that that's a larger vessel with 19 people going out fishing all at the same time. So I'm just wondering, have any of those organizations sort of grabbed onto some of this funding to help them physically distance on board some of these boats that it's almost impossible to do?
I'm not sure about who has reached out specifically with regards to that. I know that we've put a number of suggestions with the provinces in place on how to work on socially distanced on a boat, because we recognize it is a challenge. Things like making sure you have the same crew all the time, making sure that if you can't physically distance, you wear a mask, making sure that when you are on land that you're home as opposed to, out in the community before you go back out. These are all things that, we've asked to put in place that the province has been working with them on. I'm not sure if the deputy has any comments about the scallop fleet specifically, if he has anything he'd like to add there.
Nothing to add to that, Minister.
Well, let me expand that just a little bit more from the scallop fleet to the groundfish fleet. We're talking about smaller vessels, three people fishing on board it, and now we have observers having to come in on board. So I know the three people that are normally from the same community fishing on the same boat can socially distance, or at least trust one another. They're not knowing where those observers are coming from. Can you comment a little bit on that one?
So the ITSE Observer Program is something that is critical to have in order to have the science so that we can make the right management decisions. It's also part of an agreement that we have in order with the United States, that they are part of our processes. We recognize that it's going to be challenging for people. We are trying to be flexible, but the thing is that the harvesters as well as the observers have to feel that they're safe on the boat. So it's a two-way street. It's not just one or the other. It's both of them. So this is definitely going to be something that we're working on. But we recognize that we need to have those observers on the boats. It's a critical piece of the science for the industry.
All right, since I know 5 minutes goes by pretty quickly here, the Elvers issue, I did bring this up a couple of times, I think, in the House of Commons during question period, and I have brought this to your attention a couple of times. The Elvers restriction has been extended for another 45 days as of June 11th. Can you give us a quick rundown of why that was extended again? So we got some organizations that really want to get fishing.
So with regards to the Elver fishery, we have to make this decision based on conservation. We were very concerned about the stocks this year. So initially a 45-day was put in place. Now it's extended because we still have concerns around the stock. We are now consulting with the industry, with Indigenous communities to figure out what the best way forward is. We want to make sure that we do everything we can to conserve this species so that it can be fished for generations to come.
Quickly, way back in March, I brought the issue of marketing. As the markets collapsed, some of our products weren't able to get to where they normally go to. How have these programs been able to help organizations market their product worldwide to try to get some of those markets back to normal?
So we're working on a number of different initiatives with regards to marketing, of course, with provinces and territories. We are also looking at the Canadian Seafood Stabilization Fund is able to provide funding for processors who maybe need to remarket their products. So, for example, if their packaging was translated for an Asian market, they can now use this funding to rebrand their product for the French English. So there is funds available to help with those type of things as well.
And quickly, I have lobster tonight, so I will be eating lobster with some fresh seafood. So
good for you.
You can pop by, but I'm socially distancing right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. D'Entremont. A little bit ahead of time, saved a few seconds. Mr. Morrissey, for 5 minutes or less, please, and I'd prefer a little less.
Oh, thank you, Chair. You're so generous. Madam Minister, I want to take you back to a question you answered. If you could clarify, because this is something I'm hearing from some fishers. You referred to that fishers could participate in the fishery financial package boat EI as well as that if they chose not to fish as well. Am I correct? Did I hear you correctly? Could you expand on that? Because this is a bit of uncertainty out there.
Yes, the Fisheries EI is going to be available based on the previous seasons.
Whether they fished this year or not.
That is correct, I believe. Okay. Deputy Sergeant, correct? Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
As well as, what about the other financial, the other two parts to the program? If they choose not to participate because it's not viable for them, it's not financially viable, are they able to participate in those as well?
Yes, they are.
Oh, okay, thank you, Madam Minister. That'll ease a lot of minds in the fishery. Comments were made earlier, and I agree. We all braced ourselves this year for a problematic fishery, which we had little control over as politicians and government, given the quick state of the world economy shutting down. But I must say it is unfolding better than I expected. One of the areas, Minister, I would ask you to keep a close eye on is because of the lack of markets in some areas. There is a product lobster that may make its way into the marketplace that do not come through regulated registered processors. And this is something we have to be diligent about and make sure that it does not find its way into the market that could give a negative, be negatively received if anything happened. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am, and it is something that we are very aware of, and it is a concern. You're right, but I mean, of course, I would suggest that people who see that should be reporting it.
Well, I'm glad that the department is aware of this, because we will emerge from this situation, and the fishery will continue to be very strong in the future. I would like to go back again to briefly, if you could expand or comment a bit more on the need to better market in Canada. It's amazing right across the country where we're not fully familiar with the quality of seafood here from the East Coast, and the importance of being able to get product. Now we have the capacity and the capability to get product in high quality state right across this country. And how are you looking at that in this year where we need to expand that market right here in our own country?
Well, and this is one of the things that we've seen is it's interesting that it took a pandemic for us to see that Canadians don't buy enough seafood. This is something that we've been talking about since the start of the pandemic, where people need to be aware that this is not only supporting our rural coastal communities, it's good for you, it's part of the food chain, it's an excellent source of protein, and it's delicious. I mean, you can't go wrong with Canadian seafood. So we are working with our provincial counterparts to come up with ideas for marketing. We're hoping we'll have something to announce very, very soon on that. Hopefully within the next week or so, that we'll be able to make some announcements with regards to some marketing plans that we're going to be putting in place.
Madam Minister, going back to a question that was raised with you by my colleague, Mr. Cormier, can you identify, have the provinces been at the table financially to assist on this troubling year within the fishery? We know there's issues of young fishers entering the fishery with high debt loads, but most in the past, financing of the fishery was always a responsibility of provincial administration, governments, and their agencies. Could you comment on your discussions in that area? Are the provinces prepared to act in an area where they have control over, which is debt relief on financing?
I I do meet with my provincial counterparts. I know that some of them have stepped up with some aid, not nearly as much as what is needed, obviously, but we're still working with them. And I don't know if Deputy Sergeant, you have anything you can add there?
I know in Nova Scotia, for instance, is looking at their loan program, but of course the provinces are in a much more difficult fiscal position than the federal government, and have been very much looking to the federal government. I mean, we do have a series of programs already with the provinces, such as the BC Salmon Restoration Fund, the Atlantic Fish Funds, and of course we've been working with the provinces to make sure we get that money out of the door as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Madam Gill, for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
So I'll give the floor to my colleague. Oh, I'm sorry, to have been confusing. Thank you, Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca. Thank you, Madam Minister, for your presence, as well as everybody else who is around the table today. Madam Minister, I'm asking myself something. If this health crisis had happened at another time during the year, perhaps the catastrophic impact on fisheries would have been lesser. But of course, we cannot change the situation. Has your ministry evaluated the impact of the pandemic on all of the industry, but especially on the drastic lowering of the revenues of the fish harvesters?
Very good question. Of course, right now, since the onset of the pandemic, we have been working to address the issues immediately, because we know that that's what we need to do. This is an immediate concern, but one of the things that we have seen, of course, is where there are gaps within the sector, within the industry, and how we can best fill those as we go forward. I have said from the start that this has got to be, immediate an immediate response, a midterm response, and then a long-term response to the industry and what it needs. We're going to continue to work with the industry to fill the gaps, to find where the challenges are. We have seen things like, the programs that are in place in agriculture. We don't have an equivalent in fisheries. So these are all questions that we're asking ourselves now, and how we can best go forward to continue to grow our industry.
Madame la Ministre,
Madam Minister, from a point of view of science, has the department intended to quantify the effects of the near cancelling of the season on stocks? Can the fact that we're not fishing have an impact on the different ecosystems, whether it's positive or not?
Very quick answer, please.
I'm going to turn this question to the deputy, please.
Sure. It's going to vary very much stock by stock. In some stocks, fishing activity does significantly affect the population, and for other stocks, it's a much reduced impact. Certainly, our science activity is continuing. It's been a little slower to get it going this year, obviously because of the crisis, but we are confident that we'll be able to measure impacts on fish stocks, both of the changes in fishing activity, but of course, all of the other things that go on normally in the marine environment.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes, please, or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, Minister, for being here, answering a lot of tough questions. Minister, my concern, and I raised this with your department last week, is around the foreign licensing. And can you talk about the impact foreign licensing is having right now on our commercial fleet during COVID? I know that many of the harvesters are looking for some fairness in terms of, a better deal in terms of how the breakdown is of the leasing of that quota. For example, some harvesters have leased based on last year's market price. They've locked into those deals before they even leave the dock. They're locked into a price that's way above what the market is right now because of those global market channels are shut down or are very slow moving. Can you talk about, has the government looking at a 50-50 split that they can mandate so that local Canadian fishers and harvesters are able to survive this season?
Thanks, Mr. Johns, for the question. I'm actually going to turn this to the deputy.
Actually turn that to Jean-Guy Forgeron. Will now find his mute button.
Yeah, so the department, as I mentioned last week, Mr. Chair, doesn't have a global policy on foreign ownership that is across the country, that we have particularly no foreign ownership rules, specifically in the West Coast. Then we have 2 sets on the East Coast, one for the inshore fishery where there's no foreign ownership, and then
I'm focused on the West Coast. Sorry,
on the midshore.
Respond to that. Yeah.
Due to the comments and the deliberations of this committee, Mr. Chair, of last year in the West Coast licensing information, we've decided as a department to launch some policy review on the issue of foreign policy ownership, pan-Canadian wise, to see what is the right answer from a national perspective, but also from a regional perspective on the issue of foreign ownership. And we've just begun launching that work recently.
Okay, can we get a commitment from the government? They're going to look at it, well, at least start with making sure that Canadians know who owns those fishing licenses, so that we know where those people live outside of the country, and will they stop the sale of quota outside of Canada so that Canadian fishers get priority in buying that licensing? It's for the minister.
And I'm going to turn it over to the deputy.
Just to say that we're well aware that the transparency is very much lacking in this area. It is, we do need to do more work to establish the actual beneficial ownership of these licenses. And as John Gee says, we've launched policy work which will very much focus on that, as well as other issues around foreign ownership of licenses.
I'll just say that
thank you, everyone. We've gone a little bit over time. A big thank you, of course, to the Minister for being here now for the second day in a row and taking all the questions from all the members of the committee. It's not every day that we get to see the Minister 2 days in a row from, I believe, any department for that matter. So thank you to you, Minister Jordan. Thank you to your officials. I know it's not easy to carve out that amount of time with such a large contingent of staff as well. So big
thank you very much, everyone. And I want to thank Chris D'Entremont for inviting me to his place for lobster tonight.
We'll all go, but he's social distancing. Thank you to the committee for your indulgence over the last 2 days. Look forward to seeing you all again on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken.